A week ago, we released a video called Retiring at 55 with $400,000. And we had a lot of feedback, both positive and also some questions that came up about how's that fiscally possible. And so today we're just going to talk about how we got to the financial plan that has led us to make the decisions that we made in order to set this plan in motion.
Hi, we're Josh and Petra, early retirees traveling the world slowly while sharing honest insights about retirement and life on the road. Join us and share in the journey.
I do want to kind of backtrack a little bit, because steps that we had made early on, like 15 years ago, is what helped us get to the point where we are today. Now, we made this decision a little over a year ago to slow travel the world. We didn't know we were going to do this 15 years ago. However, because of the, I don't know if I want to say foresight, but just because we didn't know we were going to do this thing, but because of the financial plan for retirement that Josh had put into place is what allows us to do this today. So we decided to walk away from the corporate life, so to speak, or the rat race, the grind, whatever you might call it, at age 55. Now I'm 54, he's 55. So when we talk about age of 55, it's Josh's age. And so a little over a year ago, when we realized this is something we wanted to do, we had to put pen to paper and then develop a plan, right? So part of that plan was also we needed to eliminate any debt that we had, put a plan in motion to start eliminating that, but then we'll talk a little bit later how we got all of it taken care of. And based upon the savings that we had already and items from like the sale of our house and our property, we were able to get to $400,000. And looking at different expenses in different areas, we felt like a $300,000 a monthly budget was very doable for us. And actually in some locations we could actually live for less than that. And again, we're slow traveling the world, so that means we're doing it outside of the United States.
Yeah.
And that $400,000 that we had mentioned last week really gets us to age 62, which we will then switch to. We'll still have a nest egg of that 400,000, but we'll be switching to and drawing early from Social Security.
Right. So the savings plan, I had been saving for years on the premise of 1% for every year over 20. It was something I read in a financial article back in my 20s that said, if you save 1% a year, it's a negligible amount. You won't really notice it coming off of your paycheck. And so when you get older, of course, now you're talking about, with 25, 30, 35%. And that seems like a lot at that time, but if you've done it incrementally over time, you really don't notice the difference. But that is a very significant number. As you get older, it's a much bigger chunk. Plus, as you're getting older, not always, but usually you're making more money by the time you're at a later stage in your career. So now we're talking about much more significant savings. So anyway, that was the premise that I followed. And when I started my job that I recently retired from, I was 40 years old. So at that point, I was putting 20% in per year. And as time passed, I increased it to 25 and 30%. But essentially, it was 25% for the majority of, or average for 15 years. So 25% over 15 years for my paycheck, and that accumulated to $250,000. And that's in a 401k. Now, I retired at 55 from my place of work, and I have not transferred that money to another another savings program. And that qualifies me for the rule of 55, which says I can withdraw from it if I need to without taking a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Now, some of that money is in an IRA versus a Roth. The majority is in a Roth. The IRA money, anything that I take out from the IRA gets taxed as it comes out. I'll probably take from that last. But that's where 250,000 of our 400,000 came from.
And also, it like Josh had mentioned, taking advantage of contributing what you need to contribute so that your employer matches it if they offer that is, that's free money you don't want to lose. And so I also did that, with my job as well. And I think both of ours was a match at like 5%.
Yeah, and the money that they did match was to an IRA, so it gets taxed later when without tax early. So also at 55, meeting our plan, we just decided to sell our house. And since we were going to be traveling long term, like multiple years, we didn't want to have to contend with expenses back home. So we sold off a lot of our goods that we really just didn't need on the road, or things that didn't have any sentimental value. Those things that we did have that had sentimental value, or things that we felt like were too valuable to let go of, we saved with a family member.
Yeah. But really the greater majority of everything that we owned, we sold primarily through Facebook Marketplace. I do have a video that talked about my strategy of how I
She was very successful.
I was.
Very, very successful. Yeah. She had her own following through Facebook Marketplace. People were waiting to see what she would post next.
Yeah, so you always, if you're thinking about it, feel free to take a look at that and learn some of the tips that I used, and maybe you'll be successful too. So we, after we sold our house, and we were lucky, I feel like we were super lucky because the housing market is shifting, at least in our area. Yeah. And our house, 19 days when we got an acceptable offer. Yeah. So if you take the sale of the house minus all of the fees, closing costs, all that kind of stuff, realtor fees, and we still did owe some money to the bank. It's not like we owned it outright. It wasn't much, but we still owe that. So if you, so the profit minus all those fees, plus the money that we made from the garage sales and stuff, which isn't insignificant. I mean, I haven't totaled it up yet, but I'm gonna guess we were maybe $10,000 to $15,000. I stopped counting it at about 5. Anyway, so then, we had a chunk of money. And we had mentioned that we had put a plan into getting rid of all of the debt that we had. The remaining debt that we had, now we paid off with a few bucket list items from the sale of the house. And then all of those fees, after all of that, we still had about $150,000 left from the house.
So that amount, we ended up with a clean slate, so to speak. We don't have any debt leaving the country, which is really important. You don't want to have any circulating debt where you're paying month to month out of pocket for that. And then we had the money, the cash money from the sale of the house, the $250,000 savings, and so the 150 ended up going into either a money market account, which is an account that allows you to withdraw money within 24 hours of need or request.
And you're still making a little bit of interest on it.
Yeah, it's like a interest checking in a way. We get about 3% off of it, and then after that, the remainder went into stocks, which you can also sell if needed at some point. You do end up having to pay tax, I believe, if you make money on your stock. Whatever whatever you sell it at minus the cost basis. Yeah. But it's a small amount, or it may be a small amount. So it's negligible. We can afford it.
Yeah, and really the goal is not to use the 250,000 that's in a 401, like a 401k right away. That is for later on if we need it. And we were just hoping that the $150,000 cash that we have, yes, we'll still grow some, interest, but we'll use that as long as we can.
Yeah.
Now, I know you're in your mind, you're thinking, oh, well, $36,000 a year at $3,000 a month, you're going to go through that very quickly. And absolutely we could. But we set that to give ourselves a little wiggle room to maybe visit some areas that maybe might be a little bit more expensive than where we're spending more of our time in.
Yeah.
Hopefully in the end it'll balance out. It'll be less than 36,000.
Yeah. A quick example of that would be, while we're traveling through Eastern Europe, which is remarkably less expensive, we are going to be in the Christmas markets, which is in Western Europe, and those areas are much more expensive. Now, we'll be there a lot shorter time, but there is a lot of travel involved. So although we'll be taking public transportation, which should be less expensive, just doing all this quick travel adds up very quickly. But that's something that we put into our plan as far as budget towards the future versus right now. Right now we're in an area where it costs a lot less, and so we're just not going to be spending that much.
Yeah. So if you think about that grand total of $400,000, and then you minus the budget that we have, $3,000 per month times 7 years, because we had mentioned at 62, that's when we're going to do an early withdrawal from Social Security. But the total is $252,000 over 7 years. So that really leaves us like $148,000 left of that remaining $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of, that's kind of a backup, amount of money that we can use in case something happens, serious health.
Should we need to make an emergency flight to the U.S. for some reason?
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. And once we get to 62, and you can do that now, like if you already haven't, you can log into your Social Security Administration account to look at one, to make sure that you qualify for Social Security. It'll tell you if you've got the work credits in order to claim, which we have both done. And then you can look to see how much money you'll be able to withdraw when the time comes. And Josh had found a calculator, I'll let him explain it, that lets you kind of determine what that will be. Because remember, we're 7 years out.
Yeah, so I have to admit, I looked this up online, and they recommended that I take a look to see if there's going to be a significant difference in the amount of Social Security payment I get. And there is a little bit of a difference, but it's not as big as I initially thought. Oh, I'm not paying in for the last 7 years before I start to withdraw. This might be a problem. So both Petra and I have worked long enough. 35 years is the cutoff, where you're working and putting into Social Security before you get your withdrawal payments. And so we already eclipsed that, and the calculation is based on what you've put in, and it maximizes, so it takes your top years for your payout. I'm not sure how many years they take, if it is 35 or not. So the last 7 zeros that I'm going to put up affected a little bit, but not as dramatically as I thought. Anyway, I checked it, and it came down a little bit. Petra's also comes down a little bit, but at the same time, when we combine our Social Security incomes, I thought it was kind of an interesting surprise that it came to about $3,000, which was the budget that we kind of set for ourselves. So we'll be well versed in $3,000 or less by the time age 62 rolls around.
Yeah. So now, Josh also has a couple of small pensions that at 62 we can utilize as well. We don't talk about them much because they are small, but we definitely want to use them because that's money that he, served in the company and that he can get. So anyway, it is important for us in order to, for everything to go kind of as planned, for us to live within that $3,000 a month to help ensure that, yes, we've got that extra $148,000 roughly in a bank kind of set aside in case we need it for anything. We have thought during this process that we're looking, not only are we slow traveling the world, but we're also looking for a place that we may want to settle down to one day. We might come back to the US, we may not. But every location that you visit, they have different rules. So if we end up finding a place that we absolutely love and we can purchase a property, then we would have a little nest egg to do that. If we are in a location that we can't, because as Americans, maybe they don't let us purchase property, we can only rent, that's okay too. That will easily fit within, hopefully, our $3,000 monthly budget that we have set for ourselves. And as we are looking at places across the way, affordability is one that we're absolutely looking for. I mean, and so it would have to, rent has to fit in, into that amount.
So we're in no rush to resettle at this point. We can go on rent on a monthly basis for multiple years. There's plenty of places. I was just talking to a lady who is doing Airbnbs, and she's like, hey, there's all these places for $500 a month or less, and they're all over Europe. She's like, you do have to put in some homework to find them, but they're there. And that's kind of what we're looking at too, is trying to keep our costs across the board down so that we can stay within the $3,000 a month. Plus, by doing slow travel, that really makes a difference. A lot of people who rent property are gonna lower or bring the price down if you stay for a month or longer. For the short visits, you can expect to pay a higher price. So that's why, slow travel works out and is a good cost-saving measure if you're traveling.
Yeah. And also when you're slow traveling and you're trying to keep your costs down, things that you were used to doing or consuming in the United States may have to change. And I like to use my Starbucks quote-unquote addiction as an example.
There's no quotes, it's an addiction.
Love Starbucks. I had the app. I've loved collecting those stars, for free drinks or whatever. My go-to was chai tea. Hot or cold, it didn't matter. That was always my go-to. And then I, of course, had a few other things I liked. But where we are currently, there is no Starbucks in this country. So it wasn't just a choice. It was a mandatory. I had to get over that. But reality, we're going to go to some places that, yes, we'll have a Starbucks. But again, in order to keep that $3,000, I can't have one of those daily. Maybe every once in a while. But that's a habit that, I had to change in order, because you know how much Starbucks are. And honestly, in Western Europe, it's not really that much cheaper. And it can add up when you're doing that every day. You're having a drink or two sometimes from Starbucks every day. So you find the local chai tea and where you want to drink that. Yeah, just being flexible, really.
Yeah.
And absolutely. Flexibility when you're traveling around to the different locations, you have to be flexible. Because and that's just part of the experience of this slow travel lifestyle. learning about the different cultures and the different people, and trying to live even for a short period of time in harmony with them. And everything's not going to be like the U.S. And if it was, why did we leave? So we're trying to experience more. Anyway.
Yes. So going back to our plan, we initiate early Social Security, and by doing that, we're no longer withdrawing from our savings, leaving that nice little 150K approximately nest egg at the back end of that, which is, I think that's a fair amount of money. We can do a lot with that. So we'll see when we get there how much is left and what we have to what decisions we have to make. So the plan was, as we said, the plan is $400,000 made up of 3 separate pieces. We've got the money market money, which will be drawn down first. We have the stock market money, which gets drawn down second, and then we have the 401k money, which gets drawn down third. More than sufficient amount of money for 7 years to get us to age 62 when we take out our Social Security payments. And the stock and the 401k are just going to continue to accrue dividends and grow in that time. So we potentially could have more by the time we do hit 62. And there's a lot of things that can happen between now and then, and a lot of different variables, and we will conquer all of that as we get there. There's no point in worrying about it now. We have a good starting point, and I feel like a real solid plan going forward.
You have to understand this. We're not saying follow exactly what we do. We are not financial advisors,
No.
Not at all. We, met with them and accountants and stuff before we left. Of course, they all thought we were kind of like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But we are not them. So please do not take anything that we said as like, this is what you need to do. This is just our story, our example, and what we feel comfortable with. And just because we feel comfortable with this doesn't mean that if you're looking at doing slow travel, that you would feel comfortable with this. So you need to go ahead and talk to your own professionals,
So, the biggest argument against doing what we're doing is the fact that we're at an age now where we're in our prime money-making years. Potentially we're essentially sacrificing, hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Potentially. But there's a lot of things that could happen in that same time period, health-wise. We both worked in the medical field, so it was pretty obvious that between 55 and 65 is where a lot of stuff was cropping up. And so that's why a lot of the reason why we felt like we needed to get out and do what we wanted to do all this time now, because we may not have that time once 65 rolls around.
Right. Tomorrow's never promised.
That's right. So we thought we'd go ahead and get on it now. And then in our golden years, we get to sit back and enjoy the sunny mornings and sips of coffee and just talking to whoever our friends are at that time.
So, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching along. Hopefully, if you watched the last video, this may answer some questions that you had. Regarding that information, because we didn't go into a lot of details about how we got to the 400,000, and then that was for 7 years. But so if you find this information helpful, or if you would like to kind of follow along in our journey, please consider subscribing to our channel. It helps the algorithm if you give us a thumbs up, or you even make comments. YouTube sees that as, oh, this is something people like, and then they kind of push it up with the algorithm. And we would very much appreciate that if you would do that.
So thank you to those that are returning subscribers. Thank you for watching this far into the video. And if you're a new subscriber, please give us a thumbs up and click the subscribe button and hit the bell for any future videos to be sent to your feed. And thank you for everything today. We really appreciate you guys. And I guess we will see you in the post.
See you in the post. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.